Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of Chasing 518. Today, we're gonna see if we can figure out why this car overheats. Got a gas line road out here at Wagon Wheel OHV, and I'm gonna go back and forth and try a bunch of different things and see if we can figure out why it's overheating. Test number one is I'm doing nothing to the car. This is exactly how it was configured for KOH, except now I actually have a temperature gauge that works. So I'm gonna drive the car at like 20 miles an hour, 30, 40, like whatever it is, until I can figure out what speed it is that the car overheats. And then I'll start making some changes one at a time, see if I can figure out what to do to make this car stay cool. All right, I just made first pass, gas line road, probably, I don't know, I have to check the trip meter. I probably went 3 miles, maybe something like that. Tried to gradually increase from 20 miles an hour for a little while, 30 miles an hour for a little while, 40 miles, and it seemed right about 50 miles an hour is where it couldn't maintain its heat. It's not hot out here today. You can see I'm still wearing a sweatshirt. So if I can't go 50 miles an hour in 60-degree weather, that's definitely a problem. So I'm gonna let the fan do its job here stationary, kind of prove to me that it can pull the temperature back down to 200 or 190, something like that. Maybe even let it run until the fan shuts off. Then I'll turn around, go back down this valley and back up to camp, see if I can duplicate that same thing, and then I'll make my first modification. Test number one or number two? Was one the baseline? Anyway, first thing I'm gonna do to try to fix it is I just took off this kind of guitar pick shaped piece right here with the idea that maybe air flowing through the car at speed will help create a low pressure behind the radiator and help pull air up and out of the car. I'm not optimistic, but I think it's worth trying. It's easy. It was 3 Zeus fasteners, so we're gonna do that. Another thing that I keep looking at is I've got this opening here that wasn't always open, and I wonder if I'm getting a lot of air in the front of the car and creating like a high pressure on the back side of the radiator so that it won't let air really come through the radiator. So I brought some cardboard and tape. I might end up taping that up, see if that makes a difference. But after this one, I'm gonna work on this screen here. So let's go make a pass and see what we can figure out. Back from first test here, where I took this panel off. Made no difference. In fact, could be worse, or it could just be that I'm starting to actually heat soak everything, and it's just getting hot quicker. Probably also driving the car harder now that I know the terrain. So I'm gonna put that back on, and then now I'm gonna pull this panel, the side panel, off and pull that screen, drill those rivets and pop that screen out of there, since it's a 51% open screen, meaning it's 49% blocked. Just did another pass with the screen removed. So the perforated screen that I had in here from McMaster Car was rated as a 51% open, essentially meaning it's 49% closed. And you can see the opening I have isn't even as big. It's not even as big as the core itself. So if I'm blocking half of this opening, that means it was absolutely requiring that it pulls air from around the radiator, which theoretically all of this air is hot because that's from the engine or the exhaust side of the fan of this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a bunch of like ducting tape, maybe some cardboard, and I'm going to try and tape the outside of the radiator to the panel. That way the only air the car can get through the radiator comes from the outside. from ambient. I'll try that and see if it makes a difference. I think just pulling the screen made a difference, but it's hard to tell. I also feel like I'm starting to think I don't really love the thermostat. So I assume it's got a factory LS truck thermostat in it, because it, you know, even just idling, fan full running, it only cools down to like 195. And I think for something that I'm putting so much heat into, that's maybe not the best starting point. So I kind of wish I'd brought everything I needed to delete the thermostat, drive a freeze plug in the water pump, and do that bypass, but I don't have that stuff with me. So short of running into Ridgecrest and getting a freeze plug, I'm not sure. So I'll just move on right now and tape up that panel. Probably 90% taped up, sealed up, as best I could get it. Should be enough to decide if that's helping or not part of the problem or what. So jump back in the car and go for another rip. The tape made a pretty big difference. Definitely kept the car at 50 miles an hour, kept it around 210. So I'm definitely on to something with sealing the radiator to the ambient temperature versus letting it just kind of circulate hot air. I really wish I didn't put the thermostat in this motor, so I don't know if it's like a 210 degree thermostat or 195 or what. I think Ridgecrest is like 10 minutes away. I think I'm gonna do some Google and see if I can figure out what the freeze plug part number is that we use to block off the LS bypass. I kind of want to try a thermostat delete and see if I can just get that entire operating range of temperatures down to where maybe it idles and runs at like 170, 180, and then when you're working it hard, maybe it gets up to 210. Because right now it seems to just live at 210, and then when you work it hard, it'll get up to 230. I pushed it really hard coming back. Ran like 70, 74.2 was my max speed. And it kind of seemed to want to just hang at 230. So maybe it's controlling itself, but it's just kind of baseline is too high. So see what I can find for part numbers. Testing day 2. Ran out of daylight yesterday. Decided to pull the thermostat out of the car. I wanted to do the LS water pump bypass block off with a freeze plug. Ended up having to run into town twice to find a freeze plug that fit, which actually ended up just being getting in off the shelf water pump, matching a freeze plug to it in the store, and then it's got a lifetime warranty, so now I got a spare water pump, and then I can find a plug that fits mine later. So I'm gonna get this swapped out this morning and then get back to testing. New pump is on, letting the car warm up. I've got the radiator cap off the expansion tank. It's kind of purging some. I mean, it's making a mess, but it's at least kind of getting all the bubbles out and stuff. So I don't know if those are actually air bubbles working their way out, or if that's boiling that's taking place within. Temperature gauge says it's only like 180. So I've been kind of saying they're just air bubbles working their way out, but I think I'll let it get all the way warmed up, fan come on, then shut it off, check the level and cap it. See what I can do to clean up my coolant mess, just so I know I don't have any leaks or anything, and then go for a drive. Final test. I'm pretty much out of time. I taped up the front. Really, this is the only opening into the transmission tunnel from the front of the car. So the idea would be, if that was creating like a ram air effect, making it harder for the fan that pulls air into that space, making it harder for maybe it to pull the air in or charge it. So block that off, hopefully creating maybe a low pressure right behind it. I've pulled both panels behind my head. So now we should create like a wind tunnel effect right through the car. Hopefully creating a low pressure at the back of the tunnel. And then I pulled the spare tire off too. So I made like 4 changes, but yeah, last test for the day. I think I'm actually low on fuel, and then we need to get home. So we'll see if this one makes a noticeable difference. Testing complete. I learned a bit. Didn't exactly get where I wanted to be. Have some regrets for sure. My first hindsight with this trip and this testing was because I didn't have the gauge at KOH and the car overpressurized the system, blew the coolant out, went into limp mode. I probably should have made that my very first test, was push the car right off the gauge and get it to do that, because I don't know what actual temperature that took place at. So unfortunately on my baseline, I just ran it to 230 and then backed it off. But no matter what I did to the car, I could always get it back to 230 or even hotter. So I don't know if I made big improvements. I know for a fact taping the side panel to the core, that made a difference, because I could at that point go 50 miles an hour and the car would stay at 210, where it wouldn't do that before. And by the end of all this, I got to the point where top speed was 74 miles an hour, but I could just push the car and push the car and push the car for miles and miles and just keep climbing the temperature, which is obviously not ideal if I want to do some long endurance racing. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna regroup. I got some ideas. I got some things I want to do in the garage. I'll build that setup a little better, put a screen back on it to protect it with more openings in it, and then come back again. So stay tuned for round 2 of testing. All right, we'll see you next time. Hope you enjoyed this.